let's talk about diffusion. Diffusion is the statistical process, the statistical movement of a single particle in a gradient. It can also be the diffusion of heat, and it's a very important property in microfluidics because given by Fick's law of diffusion, the diffusion time scales with the length squared, which basically means if you have two molecules which want to meet together each other, for example in a chemical reaction, the diffusion time scales with their distance squared. So you minimize or you reduce the distance by a factor of 10, the diffusion time is reduced by a factor of 100. And that is the underlying physical principle for all of microfluidics. And the reason why microfluidics is speeding up all the biological or chemical processes. Diffusion also happens when two liquids meet, like at the intersection of this little creek and the big river. It's also an important aspect if you want to mix liquids in a microfluidic system. Hereby, mixing is mainly determined by diffusion, as you can see in the pictures of our micromixers. To highlight the importance of length and diffusion coefficient, have a look at this table, in which you can see a couple of very typical elements we use in microfluidics and the length scale, from a cell membrane to a macroscopic object like a hand. And you can see two different molecules, a small molecule like an oxygen and a large molecule like a protein, which simply have different diffusion coefficients. And while you see that in short distances like the thickness of a cell membrane or a typical dimension of a cell, the diffusion times for small molecules are pretty small, from milliseconds to a few seconds. Already on the size of a microchannel, 80 micron, the diffusion time for a large molecule like a protein can become considerably long, like an hour. And if you go to macroscopic dimensions, like a microwell or a hand in this case, you can see that even for a small molecule, diffusion times are getting really, really long. And so diffusion would not be a good process for transporting molecules on this length scale. And this actually is the reason why we have a heart.